Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics. Hic sunt dracones. For countless years, these words appeared on globes and maps alike, marking the farthest known reaches. Or at least, so the story goes. The fact of the matter is that it only ever actually appeared on 2 pieces of historical cartography. Nevertheless, that was enough to tickle our imaginations for centuries thereafter. I'm Fanatic, and today we're taking a look at Here Be Dragons Into the Unknown, a Fantasy 4X title by Todys Games. In Here Be Dragons, 1 to 6 players will be exploring an unknown land, building up cities, and crafting weapons. Players must be cautious though. While they are racing with one another to try and be the first of 10 victory points, they must always keep in mind that vicious beasts roam the lands. In addition to the standard monsters, which include the likes of cockatrices, werewolves, and wyverns, players may also add 1 or more boss monsters to the game for a greater challenge. To set up, first decide which, if any, bosses you're going to use. If you're playing solo, you must include at least the Devourer or Almond Dash. Place the cards for any bosses you're using face down. If playing with the Kraken, place the Kraken idol with the event deck. If you're playing with the Devourer, you'll construct a limited event deck and shuffle the corruption cards into the bottom half of the deck. If you're not using the Devourer, simply shuffle all the event cards together. You'll also take the 3 monster decks and shuffle each individually. 1 for level 1 and 2 monsters, 1 for levels 3 and 4, and finally 1 for level 5 monsters. Next, each player chooses a color. Each color has a unique meeple as well as 4 city pieces, 16 cubes, and a travel marker. Each player should take a player board and place 7 cubes on it. They'll fill in the tracker with 5 cubes, placing 1 on each track. The victory point, gold, and resource tracks all start at 0, influence starts at 2, and finally, health starts at 10. Place the last 2 cubes on the trunk of the tree and keep the rest of your components nearby. Place the starting tile in the middle of the table and shuffle up the rest of the tiles. Make sure the dice are within easy reach of all players, and with that, you're ready to begin. Each round in Here Be Dragons consists of 4 phases, though realistically, phases 1 and 4 should be considered a single phase. At the end of each round, and the beginning of the first round, each player will take their travel marker and place it where they want to go. Normally, you may only move a single space, but this can be to an empty spot on the map that is yet to be explored. More on that in a moment. If you start on a plains or water tile, you may move up to 3 spaces, so long as each space moved through is of the same type of terrain as the one you started in, although the tile you end in may be another terrain or an unexplored space. When moving, you cannot move through any monster meeples that are on the map. You must pay 1 gold to enter into another player's territory, as denoted by their settlement and district cubes. It should also be noted that you can move onto land from any water tile, but may only move onto a water tile if you are either moving from a settlement or onto a water tile with an anchor, representing that there are docks in that region. If you are moving into a space that is yet to be revealed, you'll randomly draw a tile from the bag. If it's a land tile, you'll place it where you've marked and immediately move onto it. If it's a water tile, then you must place a tile adjacent to another water tile if possible, even if that means it won't go into the space that you're moving to. After that, draw a new tile to replace it. If you reveal a space that gives either resources or influence, then collect those immediately upon discovery. If at any time a player is capped on gold, resources, or influence and would go over the limit of 10, then the player with the lowest victory points will receive the overflow. Alternatively, a player may simply choose not to move by not placing their travel marker. If they skip movement while in a settlement or sanctuary space, they'll regain 3 health. The second phase is event and income. First, each player will draw a card from the event deck. There's a bag in the top left corner of the card, they'll draw it into their hand and keep it secret until they decide to play it. Each of these is effectively a spell that a player can cast once, and is discarded after use. If a player has more than 5 cards in their hand, they must immediately choose 1 to discard without using it. If there's an eye in the top left corner, then the player will immediately reveal the card to everyone. If it's a quest card, they'll put it where all players can see it, and the first player to achieve the condition on the card wins the rewards listed in the top right. If it's a choice, they'll read it aloud and make their decision at once. Choices only affect the player that drew them. After each player is drawn from the event deck, any player that's founded a settlement will collect income. They'll collect gold simply for having the settlement itself, 1 for a village or town, 2 for a fort or citadel. Plus they'll collect any resources and influence they're on spaces they control, either with the settlement itself or a district cube. The third phase is Interact, where you'll make the bulk of your decisions in the game. During a player's Interact phase, they can build or expand their settlement, upgrade their arms and armor, hunt monsters, declare a battle against another player, or trade in influence points. The latter is the simplest of these. If you have 10 influence, you may return it to 0 in exchange for a single victory point. To upgrade weapons, you must pay gold as listed on the tech tree on their player board, represented by a literal tree. When you purchase or upgrade a weapon, you'll pay the cost listed on the upgrade in question. The first tier of upgrades all cost 3 gold, middle tiers cost 5 or 6, and to fully upgrade a weapon will finally cost you an additional 10. You may only carry 2 weapons with you, so you'll want to choose what you want early on. You may reset a cube back to the tree trunk if you wish, but you'll have to pay the costs all over again to upgrade to a new branch. Keep in mind that tech tree levels are not cumulative. Abilities from lower tiers do not carry over to higher ones. To build a settlement, you must first find a playing space. If there are no monster tokens and no one else controls that space, you may immediately build a village for free. When you do so, you'll immediately collect 1 influence and 1 victory point. In order to upgrade your settlement from its humble beginnings as a village, you need to build district cubes. District cubes may be placed on any land terrain adjacent to either your settlement marker or another district cube you control. Though again, if another player already controls a space, or if there's a monster meeple there, you cannot place your cube there. When you manage to place 3, 6, or 9 district cubes, your settlement will upgrade to a town, fortress, and citadel respectively, with each level giving you another immediate reward of influence and victory points. If you're on a space that is inhabited by monsters, you may hunt for them by rolling a d6. If it's a 3 or higher, you've found your quarry and draw a card from the matching monster deck. You may then either engage in battle or attempt to flee. If you want to run, roll a d6, and if it's a 4 or higher, you escape unscathed. Discard the monster card, place a monster meeple in the space, and then move your meeple to an adjacent explored tile. If you are unable or unwilling to flee, then you'll engage the monster in combat. We'll come back to that in a moment. Final action you may take during the interact phase is to start combat with another player. To do so, you must be in the same space as your opponent and spend 2 influence. You cannot initiate PvP if you cannot afford to do this. When you fight, you'll take the appropriate number of dice. 2 by default, though certain weapons may upgrade this. For example, this player has a sword and a makeshift armor, so they'll roll a total of 4 dice. If doing a PvP battle, your opponent will do the same. If fighting against a monster, the number in the top left corner of the card represents their starting dice, and you'll ask an opponent to roll for the monsters. After both combatants have rolled, you'll arrange all dice from highest to lowest and compare them one at a time. Any dice that are higher than those at the same point in the line are considered hits, and remove 1 die from the opposing pool. Both sides will continue to do this until one of them has lost all dice, at which point the survivor is the winner. However, it's not always that simple. Monsters will have innate traits which often add special rules to the battle, and likewise, players can gain similar abilities from both their tech tree and the cards they play from their hand. Once the battle against a monster ends, the card is discarded regardless of the result. If a player defeats a monster, they'll collect the rewards listed in the top right corner of the monster card. If a player loses to a monster, they'll lose health equal to the monster's level, which is the number of dice they started with. Similarly, when fighting against another player, the loser will lose health equal to the number of dice their opponent started with, while the victor will take 1 VP from the defeated. In any event, if a player drops to 0 HP, they're killed. In a single player game, that's the end of it and you lose instantly. If a player dies in a multiplayer game, you'll lose all golden resources you currently have, discard your hand, and respawn at full health in the nearest settlement on your next turn. A standard game goes until a player has 10 victory points, at which point they're declared the winner. However, we still have bosses to discuss. As aforementioned, you're required to use at least one when playing solo, either the Devourer or Almond Dash, but any or even all of them may be added to a multiplayer game to put more pressure on the players. The Devourer will require you to set up the event deck so that the corruption cards are included in the deck. Once 3 are revealed, the Devourer will appear on the start tile and begin corrupting tiles, destroying the terrain and anything built upon them. If all 8 corruption cards are drawn, players will have one last round to battle the Devourer. If it's not defeated, it's devoured the entire island and all players lose. If the Devourer is defeated, all corrupted tiles are flipped back to their normal side. Meanwhile, Almond Dash will appear whenever any player flees from a battle or is defeated by a monster in either a forest or mountain tile. From that point on, whenever a player runs from or is bested by a monster, that player rolls the d6. All monster spaces that match the number rolled will have a monster meeple placed on that space. If all 15 monster meeples are on the board at once, players will have one round to defeat Dash, otherwise the monsters overwhelm the island and once again all players lose. But there are also two other bosses that don't bring additional loss conditions. The Kraken will have its idol shuffled into the event deck at the beginning of the game and it will appear in the water once it's revealed.
Release the Kraken!
The player that finds the idol places the Kraken in any water space and all surrounding tiles immediately become water spaces. After that, place one of its tentacles in each surrounding space. Players don't have to defeat all the tentacles to challenge the Kraken, but it gains an extra die in battle for each one that it possesses. Finally, you have the Golden Dragon. When any player amasses 5 gold, it will immediately attack them and demand their stockpile as tribute. If the player refuses, they must fight the dragon immediately. All boss fights have their own unique abilities, and you should probably have at least one weapon level to maximum before attempting to take them on. Solo play feels extremely easy with just one boss. I attempted it with both the Devourer and Dash, and both times I never felt like there was any real chance of losing. I managed to reach the required 10 victory points before either of them even spawned. It was especially easy with Dash, as you can simply avoid the lesser monsters until they're basically a non-threat. If you plan to play solo, then even your first time around, I recommend using at least 2 bosses to give yourself a greater challenge. After both my solo plays, I tried rereading the rulebook, thinking I had to be doing something wrong, but I couldn't find any major mistakes I was making. On to component quality, by and large, I'd have to say it's excellent. Cards are of decent thickness and have a protective coating. The custom cut wood pieces look great. Even the Devourer and the Golden Dragon have different cuts. And on top of that, each player meeple is unique for extra flavor. The artwork perfectly captures the feel of those ancient globes and maps with their unique artistry. And of course, the multi-layered player boards are great for making sure that your cubes stay in place. I have heard some complaints about the red dice being hard to read, but I've not had any trouble with such myself. You can be the judge of that. On the downside, while the game comes with a drawstring bag to shuffle the tiles, it's simply too small for the job. They do fit into the bag, but once they're in there, there's no room left to actually shuffle them around. All in all, Here Be Dragons is a game that I really want to enjoy. The theme is a lot of fun and it looks great, but looking great just isn't as important as playing great. There certainly are parts of the gameplay that I enjoy. Combat is fast-paced and fun and doesn't slow down the flow of rounds. Upgrading your settlement and your equipment alike is very satisfying. However, when you get down to it, it just feels like there's too much luck involved. Whomever gets their settlement going first will have a major advantage over the other players. The overflow mechanic does help offset this to a small degree, but keep in mind that even with that, the other players will still be playing catch-up. It's just something that shouldn't have been an issue to begin with. On top of that, quests are, likewise, simply too random. One requires you to find a specific type of terrain, while others will require you to fight certain types of monsters. And there's nothing you can really do to work towards either of these. You just have to draw and hope you get what you need. And these quest rewards are not insignificant. To further add to that randomness, there's the items you can obtain, which wildly vary in how useful they are. Fireball and Frost feel like they can help you take on monsters well before you would otherwise be able to. On the other hand, a card like Drain is unreliable at best, while Lightning is practically worthless. There's also a few oddities in the rules. So far as I can tell, the starting player doesn't change each round. Also, at the end of the game, it seems the game just ends immediately. You don't finish up the last round to give players an even number of turns. Both of these seem like very odd design choices in the modern game space. I do feel that I should briefly mention the quest expansion. It takes the quests in-game and adds a narrative flair to them. Now you may be wondering why I'm not going into a full segment on this. The fact of the matter is, it's Kickstarter exclusive and thus won't be relevant to most of you anyways. Maybe it does help the game feel more satisfying, but that's small comfort when you consider that it's not going to be in the retail version at all. If you don't mind a game with a high degree of randomness, there is fun to be had here. If you've ever wondered what Talisman would look like as a 4X game, then this one may be perfect for you. But as for myself, I find this one to just be too luck driven to be engaging. As such, I feel I must give Here Be Dragons Into the Unknown a lacking 5.7 out of 10. If you're interested in purchasing Here Be Dragons or learning more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Here Be Dragons? What 4X titles do you recommend? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.